One. Hey, sports fans, football season's getting ready. Let's go. It was week 0 yesterday in the NCAA. College football had some games. Week 1's next weekend. NFL is roughly, 12 days away, right? They play Thursday after Labor Day, correct?
Yeah, on the 8th.
And by the way, as you know, PB's been talking about, he's a big fantasy guy. There's his fantasy girls, mine as well. Fantasy games, the fantasy leagues are in like draft mode, right?
Oh yeah, most drafts will be happening this week. Actually,
You've already had a couple, you said, right?
yeah, I had one. I got one
One.
tomorrow night, and then I got my big league on Wednesday night.
All right, and then the PBnZ Sports Chaos Survivor Fantasy Draft takes place Monday night. 24 teams this year. This is going to be interesting, the strategy about that. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. PB, I got to ask you a question, though. Speaking of fantasy, what would be your ultimate sports fantasy?
Ultimate sports fantasy. I'm going to have to go with a road trip across the country to go to every single major league game, like in a span of like 2 or 3 months, and just get in a car or whatever, just plan it out and start your mission and just go from city to city and take in a ball game, and do it all in like maybe 60 days or 90 days.
Wow, that's a pretty good one. I like that one. All right. Mine obviously would be to go to a Dallas Cowboys NFC Championship game at the stadium and then hang out with these girls afterwards, the after party when we win on the way to the Super Bowl. That would be one. Other than that, it would be going to the Rose Bowl. I definitely want to go to the Rose Bowl one day. That is my ultimate sports trip, fantasy, whatever.
Yeah. My second one would be Super Bowl. I mean, I've never been to a Super Bowl in my life. Now I live in a place where the Super Bowl is going to be coming every, 4, 5, 6 years or something like that. So maybe there's a chance I can get to one in the years to come.
The only thing about the Super Bowl is, as great as it would be to attend, the price is not worth going to the game when you can get just as good experience watching it at home, for crying out loud, without spending $4,000.
That's the thing. That's the kicker, right?
Yeah. If I got a free ticket to the Super Bowl, that would be that's a fantasy. All right, Petey. Hey, sports fans, we want you to do one thing for us. Go on our Facebook page and you tell us what would be your ultimate sports fantasy. The other thing I want you to do, what is your ultimate sports highlight that you accomplished in your lifetime? What was it you did that was the most awesome thing in your sports career, lifetime, whatever? PB, what would yours be?
You're talking about attending an event or playing?
Attending or playing, either one.
Yeah, I mean, geez, I had some pretty fun hockey games that stood out to me when I was younger, but I got to go with attending because they're just like people can relate and they're so miraculous. One of the games I'll never forget that I went to at Fenway Park was when Kyle Yastrzemski hit his 400th home run.
Oh, you were there for that?
I was there for that. I was probably like 12 or 13 years old, I would say. I believe it was either the A's or the White Sox, I want to say, that he hit it against. The A's. I think it was the A's he hit it against. And went into the bullpen or over the bullpen. I was sitting on the third base side up behind the dugout. And I could see it clear, because I had the view perfectly straight ahead out to that bullpen. And it's his 400. So for me, that was one of the biggest ones.
Wow. All right. For me, attending would have been probably, I was at that Celtics playoff game when they came back from 29 points down. And up to like 2 years ago, it was the record. It was back in like 2003 maybe. Antoine Walker was on the team. They were playing the Nets. That's all I remember. And it was so loud. That was pretty good. And for me, personally playing, the fact that I was able to play semi-pro football 10 years after my last college game, already a father of 2, that was pretty exciting. And I ended up starting the whole year. I couldn't believe it. I was only going to go there to play special teams, I thought.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so. All right, let's get into some real football fantasy stuff. PB, I got some questions for you. I want to see how you address these questions, all right? You ready?
Yeah.
Number 1. Right now, as we enter fantasy draft period, who is the 3 most overrated players in your mind going into the fantasy drafts?
Yeah, and overrated, you got to be careful when you talk about overrated players because when we talk in fantasy speak, we're basically saying that they're not worth the value where they're getting picked at, right? It
Correct.
doesn't mean they're not going to finish as a, and I'm going to put David Montgomery up the top of this list. And it's not to say he can't finish in the top, 15 to 20 running backs, which is still a solid running back too, right? On a team, because we always say when we say running back two, we mean you have to be ranked 1 to 12 to be running back one, because there's typically 12 team leagues.
Yeah.
When you're ranked 13 to 24, you're a running back two. And I think he's good enough to be a running back too. I think he can finish in that, 20th kind of range, but there's a lot of risk associated with that too, because first of all, the team is weak, right? They could be one of the worst teams in the league. They're going to be behind a lot, which means that they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. Justin Fields is a new quarterback. He's not the type of guy who's going to be handing the ball off all the time, right? He's going to be running himself, potentially. He'll be looking for Darryl Mooney a lot. He'll be looking for Kmet, the tight end, a lot. So I just don't think he's going to, he'll have a couple real good games. Like in a best ball league, he might be fine. But to have him as your, reliable RB2 at this point, there's a question mark there. So I'm putting him as someone to watch out for in the draft.
Who do you see as a watch out for from the quarterback position?
At quarterback, there's been a lot of talk recently about Joe Burrow. Because people are thinking about taking him as one of the top, 6, 7, 8 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And there could be some question marks there too. I mean, he had an unbelievable season last year. I don't think he can go up from that. If anything, he could regress a little bit.
Okay.
So Burrow's in there. Stafford with his, elbow, that seems to be a question mark. That could be a little bit of a risk taking Stafford too high. Those two stand out to me right now.
So now you say Stafford and the elbow. Give me a couple of players that you're concerned about because of either injury or the team they're on or the players around them.
Well, one of the guys right now I'm going to go with players around him and team he's on. One of the guys right now is really moving up the draft board quickly is Dameon Pierce. He's a rookie. He's on the Houston Texans. And he's flying up draft boards. I mean, he's somewhere in the 70s and 80s even now, which means that he would be like a 7th round pick. Before he was probably in the 130s, which would have him in the 10th or 11th round. So he's moved up like 3 or 4 rounds.
Where was he even drafted in the NFL draft?
I know. I'm not even sure what round he was drafted in.
So why that guy's moving up blows my mind. The Texans are a horrible team. They got a question at quarterback, right? I mean,
and then another team will be behind a lot, right? And they're going to be, how much running can they really do? But
that seems to be there must be a plant there someplace. Somebody's got to be planting something in there. That's bogus.
I think the reason is this: he's likely to win the RB1 job on the team, and he's gonna get the workload. And that's the thing: fantasy people like workload. They like carries and they like targets because if the ball's in your hand, you can do stuff. If the ball's not in your hand, you can't do stuff, right?
Right.
So a lot of fantasy people like the volume guys who get a lot of work and a lot of volume. You can make the same argument as we mentioned about David Montgomery. In a way, if Khalil Herbert's not doing the running back by committee situation, which I don't think he's good enough to do today, it's the workload type of thing. So that's the reason why he's moving up the board. But I think it's a risky pick overall.
I got one for you.
All right.
This guy's very high. I believe right now he's considered the 3rd or 4th running back in most fantasy draft profiles. It's Najee Harris. And not because Najee Harris is not a good player. That offensive line is horrendous, which is why Ben was so banged up the last 2 years. And they haven't done anything in my mind to get any better, right?
Yeah.
Look at James Conner, good example. James Conner done nothing at there, and he goes out to Arizona, and now he's a fantasy stud, right? So there you go. And unproven quarterback, whoever's going to be his quarterback. So Najee Harris, to me, is a huge risk if I'm drafting in the top, in my first round.
Yeah. And if we're all sticking at running back, let's talk about Travis Etienne. Here's a guy who missed his entire rookie season with an Achilles injury. Lots of promise coming out of Clemson, right? Going to Jacksonville. Jacksonville's, new coach, they revamped their offensive scheme and strategy. You got Trevor in his second year. They got Christian Kirk now, so it's supposed to be a legit wide receiver one. And Etienne is the thing about Etienne is he can catch the ball. So if you're in a PPR league, here's a guy who can not only be the workhorse, but he's likely to get a lot of catches and he could be a 3-down back there. So that's all great from potential, but you're also now go back to the bad team. You're on Jacksonville. You're on a team that's going to be down a lot and throwing the ball a lot. And you're still talking about a guy who hasn't taken an NFL snap in a regular season game yet. So you got to weigh that risk in too. So here's another guy that comes to mind.
I got a guy, speaking of that, an established guy who most people want to pick one or two. CMC, right? Yeah. I mean, he's hurt 2 years in a row now. He's had bad injuries at a position where the lifetime of that position is 4 years. He's going on his, I believe, 5th or 6th with 2 bad seasons of injury. So he's a guy I'd be very concerned with. I got 2, though, that you're going to think about for a minute, and only because of the scenario around them. Quarterbacks, Tom Brady, offensive line, no interior offensive line, very banged up. 2 more guys got injured last night. He likes to step up in the pocket. He can live with bad tackles, not bad guards in center. They're hurting there. And another guy, Aaron Rodgers. He's already called out his wide receiving crew already in preseason. And by the way, he's not a guy that puts a lot of work in the offseason, as we know. He's out there in Hawaii. He's like, climbing mountains, swinging vines, whatever. He's 38 years old, well, going on 38. So I'm concerned about Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, he doesn't have the weapons around him either. But he's still Aaron Rodgers, and he still has those 2 great backs. So I think he'll be okay. He's going to be where he's right now. He's right around like QB 12 to 15, somewhere in that range. So if you draft him 12 to 15, I think you'll get your money's worth.
Can I just say this? If Devontae Adams was still there, he'd probably be QB 3 or 4.
He could be. It could be up there for sure.
Can you imagine that one player, and he's fallen that far?
Yeah,
that's surprising.
We'll see if the whole situation with Tyreek Hill, and if that makes Tua a legitimate QB1, meaning a top 12 quarterback in this league. Obviously, he's not going off there. He's behind Aaron Rodgers. He's a QB 15 to 18 Tua right now, but will Hill make him a QB 10 or a QB 12? It's possible. And how will it affect Mahomes, right? So it'll be interesting to see how these receivers, these big name receivers, impact on these quarterbacks.
I already said, we did our little mock draft the other day. I think Mahomes is going to have a better season this year because and it's already showed it in the 3 preseason games that he's played in, or 2, I'm sorry, where he's looking around for multiple players, and he's got multiple guys that can catch the ball. I think Juju Schuster's going to he's going to be the comeback player of the year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think she's going to be the other guy that watch out for a receiver I think could have a good comeback year too is Allen Robinson.
Yeah. I got one for you. I got a sleeper for you. Rashad Bateman, the Ravens. They only got one other target, and that's Mark Andrews, the tight end, right? So you spoke about it a few minutes ago. Targets is the key. He's going to get a lot of targets.
Yeah.
And, Hollywood Brown was okay with Lamar, but he's a smaller guy. Bateman's a little taller. I think he's 6'1", 6'2". So that's going to help him get some of those 50-50 balls. I think that Hollywood Brown was not really good at, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. I think he's a guy that you see on the high end, he might be in the 60s, mid 60s, which would be like a fifth to sixth rounder.
Yeah.
But he could drop to 6th or 7th. I would say if he's around in the 6th, late 6th, early 7th, I would say he's a great pick. He's a little bit of a reach for me, late 5th, early 6th. But I do like his potential there in Baltimore.
I got 2 guys that there's a lot of buzz about at the quarterback position that I have a lot of questions of. And we've mentioned this, I think, a couple times.
Let me guess.
Trey Lance and Justin Fields.
I was going to say Trey Lance is one of them. Yeah. All right.
By the way, Trey Lance played quarterback at the school of the quarterback that you hate. And that quarterback that you hate was better than Trey Lance when he played there.
You're talking about Carson Wentz?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good point. I mean, the school and the fact that he missed a lot of time there, he's only played in so many college games. He's never taken an NFL snap. Well, maybe he did last year. Maybe he came in, I don't know, a couple
Yeah,
times.
he played one game when Jimmy G was hurt, I believe.
Yeah,
right?
he played a game, so I take that back. But very limited NFL experience. You're right. I think everyone is going crazy about this kid's athleticism and not crazy enough about his quarterbacking skills, right? And we know what's happened to other quarterbacks that have been like that in this league. Right?
Yes.
A la pretty much every Ohio State quarterback that's ever played football.
Which is why we already mentioned Justin Fields in this questionable conversation. Good
segue, right? Good
yeah,
segue.
yeah. Hey, I know you gave us a couple sleepers last time we talked. I got a couple sleepers for you. I already mentioned one of them. I think Rashad Bateman is going to have a huge year. Or let's put it this way: if he doesn't, the Ravens are going to suck. But the other guy I think is going to have a huge year. He had 1,100 yards running the ball. We just talked about his quarterback having no wide receivers to throw to anymore. A.J. Dillon could be a huge. Imagine if he gets 50 catches to go 1,100 yards rushing.
Yeah, and he could. He very well could. He's definitely a 1,000-yard rusher type guy. He could be like a lot of talk about DeAndre Swift, but DeAndre Swift's a first-round pick. But A.J. Dillon could be DeAndre Swift-esque, right? It's just the only problem he has is Aaron Jones. I mean, Aaron Jones is the RB1 technically on that team, 1A, whatever you want to call it. But it's going to be opportunity for A.J. Dillon because there's no way he's getting more than 50% of the snaps in the backfield. So that's where his volume starts to go down a bit. But he makes the most of his usage, And if Aaron Jones gets hurt, forget about it. I think he's an RB1 in this league if Aaron Jones gets hurt or something like that. But right now, I think he's right about where his ADP is probably where he should go. But in a dynasty league, I have him in my dynasty league. I think he's a great asset in a dynasty league.
Oh, he ran for 1,100 yards last year, and he playing 50% of the time. So at the end of the day, if he gets 50 balls in the air, that's going to be unbelievable. Yeah. You just mentioned a guy that I think is way overrated because of the team, and that's DeAndre Swift. Way over. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, he's got talent. He
yes, but there's been plenty of guys that have talent that are on bad teams that never really panned out.
Yeah, he's a 3-down back, so he's on the field a lot. Again, from an opportunity perspective. But you're right. Correct. He's on the Lions. He's on the Lions. That's the thing, Another team that you drafting fantasy guys that are on bad teams just because they get a lot of volume isn't a good strategy.
No. And by the way, you open them up to chances for injury, like Saquon and CMC in the past, right? So, all right. Any other tidbits you want to give us before we wrap up? Hey, I got a little question for you, a little DYK. But by the way, I don't know the answer. Has the best fantasy scorer ever been an MVP in the league of football, NFL?
I don't know the answer either, but I would say it's possible.
I believe it's no.
Really? You don't think so?
No. Which goes to show you, fans, fantasy and the real thing don't equate.
Not always. But...
No. All right, you got any parting shot before we head on our fantasy ways? Me and my girls, we're going to go and have some Mai Tais.
No, I'm excited for our PBnZ draft. As everybody knows, that's tomorrow night at 8:00 on the Sleeper app. So we're excited to run that interesting league, right? And I get the #1 pick overall, which means I'm not picking again to 48. So we'll see. He's picking at the turn. He's got 24 and 25.
24, 25. I'm at the turn. By the way, fans, don't forget, give us your #1 sports fantasy and your #1 sports highlight. Put it on our Facebook page. We want to check it out. All right. That's a wrap. Take care.